Ito ang Oragon Internet Television. Maaasahan sa balanced news in public affairs, education, music and information. Gamit ang makabagong teknolohiya sa pamamahayag. Maaasahan sa katotohanan, kaagapay ng mamamayan sa pagkikipag-ugnayan sa pamahalaan. Oragon Internet Television Broadcasting.
Magandang araw po mga kaibigan. Welcome to another edition of our Coffee Chat. Ito po yung ating pakikipagpalitan ng pananaw sa iba't ibang resource persons. And today, minarapat ko pong anyayahan ang ating mga dalubhasa upang magbahagi ng kanilang mga pananaw sa mga kontrobersyal na naganap kamakailan. Ito po yung pagkakabaril ng isang pulis sa mag-ina na nangyari po ito sa Tarlac. So we invited former CHR chairperson, Professor Eta Rosales.
Magandang hapon po.
Vicente, po Director ng National Center for Mental Health. At si Attorney Ramil Gabao na Chair ng Board of Criminology ng Professional Regulatory Commission. So let's start. Alam po ninyo mga kaibigan, marami pong mga lumabas na balita, marami pong mga kwento na bumalot doon sa issue. So ngayon, alamin natin ano ang posibleng nangyari based on media accounts. Alam po ninyo na banggit ng Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte, mga nandun sa neuropsychiatric exam o sa recruitment ang problema. Pero saan ba talaga nag-uugat ito? Yan ang pagkukwentuhan natin. Sapagkat alam po naman natin na hindi ganun kadaling pumasok sa serbisyo ng pulisya. So, ito ang ating paksa. Siguro let's start with some historical figures from Chair Eta Rosales. Nung kayo po ay nasa Commission on Human Rights, marami nga po bang reklamo laban sa mga pulis? At ano po ang pinag-ugatan nito? Magandang hapon po.
Magandang hapon po naman. Naridinig niyo ako?
Maliwanag po.
Yes po.
Noong panahon ko, ang sabi lamang ng executive office, mahalaga rin naman itong mga nilalabas mo kasi naglalabas ako ng listahan ng human rights violations ng PNP at saka ng military. Laging number 1 yung PNP, tapos kasunod yung military, tapos iba-iba ng mga ahensya ng gobyerno o kung sino pa man. Minsan, medyo nasasaktan din yung executive dahil sa, siyempre, sila na yun So, kinausap ako, tinanong sa akin, ano ba yung, ito ba na-investigate na? Natapos na ba ang completion ng investigation? Ay, hindi pa naman, sabi kong gano'n, it's in the process of investigation. Di ilabas mo na nasa process pa lang ng investigation at hindi pa completed. Kasi pagka yan nilabas mo, akala ng mga ordinary citizens, tapos na at guilty na silang lahat. Sige, gagawin mo namin yan. Excuse me, nagkakamali kami. Tinatanggap ko yun. So, ever since then, ibibigay ko yung process kung saan na yung investigation. But we made it a point to regularly come out with a list of violations ng agents of government. Kasi when you talk of human rights violations naman, by law, conventional law, you are referring to agents of government who actually cause the human rights violations. Yung Republic Act 9851, which deals with international humanitarian law.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so, pagka ganon, private kasama na riyan, hindi na yan ligtas. And since then, I never had any problems with the with the executive. Pero with the police, anong pinag-uugatan nito? Maganda ang sinabi ng isang human PDG, ang pangalan niya pagkain, masarap na pagkain. Bukayo. Si
Aha.
Bukayo. Oh, yan. I just remember na masarap ang pagkain. So, Bukayo. Sabi,
Aha.
alam niyo ma'am kung ano ang talagang pinag-uugatan nito? Ignorance of the law. When our personnel are ignorant of the law, of course, they commit human rights violations because they don't know what the law is all about. So di ba? So, logical nga naman yun. So, in that right, we got along very well with the heads of the PNP, and then especially when they set up the HRAW already. Yung HRAW, yung PNP, Human Rights Affairs Office. At tinayo yan noong 2007, as early as 2007, when Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo's time, ang dami-daming mga EJ case. Maraming EJ case noon. So, sabi gano'n ni Alston sa kanya, you better do something about this. And in response, the government set up this human rights affairs offices sa PNP at gano'n sa military. So yun, that was how we handled it. And all the no? And then, of course, marami rin yan yung the police themselves at tinatago nila kasi yun ang kinagisnan nila actually because I would say that during the time of Marcos, di ba? Talagang killing machinery ang pareho yung Philippine Constabulary at saka yung military. And because of that, talagang they're out to kill. So, wala silang pinag-iisipan in terms of the rule of law, in terms of what is right or wrong, whether dapat patayin kung civilian ba yan o hindi. Kasi yun yung nakagisnan nila. And I think that there was very little effort done to try to rectify that kind of phenomenon. Remember, that came on 14 years of dictatorship si Marcos. So for 14 years, mga killer machines itong mga ito. Both the military and then the PNP. And kung ano yung utos ni Marcos, talagang gagawin yan. So upon post-Marcos administrations, we had a heck of a time trying to, work out paano mong aayusin ito. Yun. So that I think are some of the reasons why the Philippine military and then the police had this kung saan ang pinag-uugatan ng kanilang pananaw. And it's a perspective. It's a perspective that of the land security sector, it's, I think it's a concept, yung mga mindsets nila ang concept of national security and state security
is paramount.
Is paramount and has very little to do with the human security concept of individual human security.
Okay. And that's just to kinikilala dalubhasa sa larangan ng criminology. Who gets to be a policeman? Tell us.
Thank you, Camelo. Upfront, dapat malaman din ng mamamayan na hindi lahat ng nagpupulis ay criminologist or criminal criminology graduate. Dapat malaman 'yon, ano. Kasi sometimes nasasaktan din kami sa criminology profession. Sa hanay namin na pagka merong isang pulis na gumawa ng kalokohan katulad nitong kay Nuesca, nadadamay kami. Pati yung pag-aaral ng criminology at pagiging criminologist ay parang hinuhusgahan na rin, no? For the record, si Jonel Nuesca ay hindi siya criminologist. Okay? Hindi siya criminologist. Kasi sa PNP po, any baccalaureate degree is an educational qualification. Isa yun sa mga qualification. Basta baccalaureate degree holder ka, pwede kang pumasok sa PNP. Sa record po ng PNP, about 30 to 40%, no? The last time is 35% nung PNP force, that's about 200,000, 30% niyan ay criminologist. Okay? So, kahit sinong baccalaureate degree holder ay pwedeng pumasok sa pagpupulis. Kung ikaw ay graduate ng teacher, ng maritime, ng engineer, ng nurse, or whatever, pwede ka. So, na meron kang eligibility ng Republic Act 1080 or nakapasa ka sa NAPOLCOM examination, qualification na yon para ikaw ay pumasok sa pagpupulis.
Okay. Nabanggit mo na hindi lahat ay criminologists sa
Opo.
pulisya. At kakaunti ito kung ihambing doon sa mga nasa serbisyo.
Yes.
Doong araw, 72 units sa college, pwede na. Right?
Mhm.
Tapos, yung advanced ROTC, pwede nang magpa-call to active duty. Pero ngayon, ito sila baccalaureate degree, right?
Yes.
Tama? Baccalaureate
Tama.
degree ang kailangan. Okay. Paano makakapasok? Merong physical examination, written exams, ano kaya?
Para makapasok, syempre, dyan yung height requirement, no, na ngayon ay mukhang babaguhin na ng Kongreso naman from 5'4" sa lalaki, 5'2" sa babae, ay ibababa naman sa 5'2" sa lalaki, no, or 5 flat sa babae naman, no. Nandyan yung requirement ng weight, no, na proportion dapat doon sa kanyang height, which should not be more or less, no, doon sa height niya, ang weight niya. Nandyan din yung neuropsychiatric examination supposedly bago makapasok. Medical examination, physical examinations. Supposedly may mga clearances yan from the NBI, from the courts, no, to be submitted. Maraming requirements para pumasok sa pagpupulis, no. Kaya kung minsan nakakagulat din na despite the so many requirements na dumaan sa neuropsychiatric examination and so on and so forth, lumalabas na pag lumabas itong mga issues na ito, ay kine-question natin paano nagkaroon ng mukhang may mental question doon sa kanyang intellectual or mental capacity, no, to perform his or her duty as a police officer.
Okay.
Despite that.
All right. Dr. Benny Vicente, come to our discussions. Tell us, what can we learn from a person who will undergo a neuropsychiatric?
Well, yung neuropsychiatric screening yan, it's a battery of tests combination of tests. Basically, meron ka dyan IQ, very basic yan. Meron kang IQ testing. And then several other tests, no, mga projective tests, no. And basically ang objective niyan, no, kung sa kapulisan, no, especially kasi magiging gun holder yan, no. Ang isang chine-check yun yung impulsivity, kung impulsive sila o hindi. So but ang isang ginagawa niyan is to rule out na yung mga major na psychiatric disorder. So kung halimbawa meron kang psychosis, no, sisiraan ka ng bait, merong mental retardation, yan NP screening, no? And then the other aspect, no, kasi depende yan kung what the position is applied for, no? So kung halimbawa ang ina-apply mo, promotion ka na sa kapulisan, no? Let's say magiging kapitan ka na o kaya magiging major ka na, Other tests may be added, may be required dun sa psychological exam mo, yung NP screening. Like for example, yung capacity to make a decision, capacity mo to problem solving, mas mataas na level ang binibigay sa'yo. Ang usual niyan, hindi kasi standard na ang NP testing is not standard for na isa lang gumagawa, no? May mga ahensya, like for example, yung mga judges natin, mga PAW, nag-a-apply sa PAW, no? Lahat yan dati no dumadaan sa National Center for Mental Health. Yung mga judges natin sa Supreme Court, meron silang sariling NP screening. Yung sa kapulisan, dati noon, nung nasa gobyerno pa ako, dumadaan sila sa National Center for Mental Health for the testing. But later on, ang ginawa nila, nagpapadala sila ng mga sarili nilang psychologists, nagpapatrain sila at sila nang gumagawa ng testing on their own, no? So, yun. Ang isang problema pa diyan sa mga NP testing na yan, no? Lalo na yung hindi lang ito sa kapulisan, pati yung sa nagpapalisensya para magkaroon ka ng baril, no?
At para maging security guard.
Oo, security guard, baril, no? Hindi, ano yan eh, minsan fly by night na mga NP screening, no? Yung nasa ilalim lang ng, alam natin yan eh, nasa ilalim ng puno ng mangga eh. Checklist lang ganyan, ibibigay lang para meron lang maibigay, tapos makukuha mo na. Yung result mo, yung araw na yun, pati lisensya mo, kuha mo na. The standard NP screening na sa government, lalo na sa National Center for Mental Health, no, and many other legitimate na NP screening, it takes about a half day yung examination mo lang, no? So meron kang pencil and paper test, no? And then it will be analyzed by a psychologist. Meron ka pang kasamang interview ng psychiatrist, no? And yung report is signed by both the psychologist saka yung psychiatrist, no? And usually ipadadala yan dun sa requesting agency. Kung halimbawa sa kapulisan, no, ni-request na pa-examine ka, hindi ibibigay sa'yo. Ipadadala dun sa nag-request na promotion to a higher position. So, a testing is done. So, minsan nga, nagagalit sila dahil hindi na-promote dahil hindi binigyan ng favorable result dun sa NP o sinasabihan na hindi ka, kasi wala namang pass or fail eh, pero sasabihin lang sa'yo, hindi ka akma dun sa job na binibigay sa'yo, no? Yun. Minsan doon nagkakagulo eh. Oo.
Opo. Pero paano yun kung merong GSC, hindi yung General Staff Course, merong governor, senator at congressman na nagbaback up?
On how they will treat the neuropsychiatric evaluation, no? In some government agencies, no, alam ko, like for example in the Department of Health, no, you may have not been recommended, yung testing mo not recommended, pero it's still up to the appointing authority of that agency. Kasi siya nakakita eh, yung NP screening is only one aspect ng it cannot be the be-all eh, na pag bumagsak ka, tapos ka na, wala na. May discretion pa rin yung head of the agency or the appointing authority to, ito, maayos to na for 20 years nasa atin to, ganito, magandang trabaho nito, ganito. It's pwede siya ma-promote, no? And then pinakuha ng NP testing, bumagsak, hindi naman bumagsak, hindi ni-recommend, no? Pwede pa rin nilang i-overturn yun. No? I-overturn. And make a decision based on Pero sa kapulisan, Hindi ko lang alam kung ginagawa nila yon. Kasi like let's say for example, yung you're going to hold a gun. No? Hahawak ka ng baril eh. And then you're found out na impulsive ka. Quick to action ka na explosive yung personality mo, no? Parang yun mahirap i-overturn yun. Pero kung ibang items on the halimbawa depressed ka nung kumuha ka, they may suggest, sige, pagamot mo muna yung depression mo, malungkot ka ngayon, highly stressed ka, let's take another exam 6 months from now. Tignan natin. Pwede kasi yung gawin eh.
Opo. Sa NP screening po ba lumalabas kung ang isang tao compulsive liar?
Oo, meron lalabas rin 'yan eh. Makukuha mo yung mga ganyan eh. Pati yung faking na yung fake yung mga sagot na pipick up yan dun sa NP screening eh. No, lalabas yan eh. No.
Okay. Good. Meron yatang gustong erase si Professor Eta. Professor? Yes.
Sa CHR, meron the law, etc. If they commit something, hindi sila pwedeng ma-promote. Hawak namin and then we look at their papers. Tapos ang final approval nga is the chair. Ako mismo. Tapos kung nakikita namin na bad yung record niya, hindi namin sila i-approve for promotion. So may level of autonomy diyan. And minsan they have
Aha. Yes.
So ayun.
Bigat ano, pero okay. Attorney Ramil,
Yes,
would you like to add to the
Camelo.
discussion?
Interesting yung sinabi ni Doc Benny, ano? Especially sa mahawak nga daw ng baril. Kasi ngayon, if you're a civilian at mag-a-apply ka ng possession, no? Possession of firearms or even license to carry firearms outside of residence, ano? Isa-subject ka sa neuropsychiatric examination. But remember, yung validity ng license na binibigay sa iyo ng PNP is good for 3 years only. Good for 3 years. So
Okay.
ang magandang tanong dito is considering the working environment ng police, no? Na palagi silang nandoon day in and day out. Ito yung mindsetting nila eh. Today I might probably be encountering I am a police officer under the law. Meron akong konsepto na I have the monopoly of use of reasonable force as against any person who would commit a crime, or I have the monopoly of use or possession of firearm. So kung sa pagpasok niya sa pagpupulis ay nasubject sa neuropsychiatric, ideally, at least in the minimum, no, kung ipahalin tulad natin siya doon sa isang civilian na hahawak ng baril. Kung antay pa natin yung promotion, 10 years pa natin siya muli isa psychiatric examination. 15 years for the kapitan na rank. Pero in the meantime, itong environment niya So ideally, Doc Benny, ang tanong ko sa'yo, ideally, at least in the minimum, how many times should a police officer be subjected to neuropsychiatric examination? Para lang mamonitor natin yung takbo ng utak niya habang nasa performance ng duty niya.
Doc Benny?
Well, I think ideally siguro every year or every 2 years, ganyan siguro, no. Kanya naman hindi mo madalas rin magawa, mabibilang mo lang sa kamay ang psychologist na trained sa PNP Mabibilang mo rin ang trained na psychologist sa National Center for Mental Health And then many of the psychiatrists then ayaw nilang mag-handle ng halimbawa licensing ng gun licensing kasi tatakot sila yung yung may-ari ng baril, pag binagsak nila, no, baka balikan
Pag nabaril
sila.
yan.
Oo, so ang nangyayari ngayon, lalo na yung sa mga guns, no, ang nangyayari dyan, maraming fly-by-night ang nangyayari. Minsan, mag-apply ka ng license for a gun, sasabihin na sa'yo, dito meron kaming kilala, gagawin na. Pati yung drug testing mo, gagawin na. No, bayad ka, tapos after 15 minutes, lalabas na yung result. No?
Galing.
It's simply because, one, yung and I don't want to say na kasi cheap yung bayad yung fees only 150, and the ideal na examination takes about a half day, no, yung battery of exam that will be given sa iyo, no. And then at the same time it is going to be analyzed thoroughly by a psychologist, trained psychologist, and then to top it all, ang end nun would be an actual interview ng a psychiatrist. I-rule out niya yung mga obvious na signs ng psychosis, mental retardation, o kung meron siyang question dun sa test. Pero yung mga NP screening na makikita mo, lalo na sa mga pagpalisensya ng baril, no? Mga naka-package deal na yan dun sa labas ng application package deal na yan, merong kasama na yung drug testing mo. Minsan nga, pumasok ka, humingi ka ng ihi, o punan ka ng ihi, hindi mo nakita kung talagang tinest nga Basta paglabas, ito, ayos na. No? Parang nag-drive-thru ka, kuha mo na kagad. No?
Okay. Yeah.
So, there is some question then doon sa ganon. And it's simply because konti lang ang trained na psychologist. Mabibilang mo a handful. And even the psychiatrists ngayon naman natin, mabibilang mo yan Even in spite of the approval ng the mental health law, kulang pa rin yung mga serbisyong yan. No? Kulang pa rin yung mga serbisyo. For many years, ganyan yan. Kulang.
It has been going on for some time. Yeah, Professor Ata, your thoughts about this?
Actually, it's, as I listen to you, ang ganda nga, napapalalim talaga So yung regulatory measures, regulatory mechanisms are reduced into transactional agreements. Everything is reduced to transaction. That's I think, we keep on talking about the bureaucracy in the Philippines is guided by transactional politics. And in a sense, yun na hindi pa tayo nagiging tunay na professional. Yung sinasabi lang, no, na kulang ang psychiatrist, neuropsychiatrist, and psychologists upang sa ganon magkaroon tayo ng ma-professionalize natin ang PNP. Yun ang tututukan mo when you make your budget. Diba? When you make a budget, dapat holistic at comprehensive ang pagtingin mo doon sa budget of building your Philippine National Police, your security forces. And kung kulang, magbibigay ka ng budget para makapag-train ng husto at mismong yun lang sa training. Tapos pangalawa, ang dami ninyong sinabi pangalawa, yung regulatory mechanisms na. Mismong yung regulatory mechanisms, lutong bakoy everything can be bought. No, sige, yun. And that's what it's all about.
Okay. It's a sad reality, but let me ask you this, the three of you, madam and gentlemen. Yung nangyari sa Tarlac triggered different reactions. Pero may nagsasabi na mga naka-uniforme na kasalanan pa nung napatay dahil hindi iginalang yung person in authority. I don't know how you'd react to this. Because even Secretary Panelo, the legal advisor of the president, said something like that. I don't know. Saan nandun ang problema natin? Ito ba ay, bahagi ng freedom of speech, why not? Pero don't you think for every time people open their mouths, lumalabas kung anong kanilang pinagmumulan? Doc Benny, being a psychiatrist that you are, how do you look at this?
Well, violence ang sa akin, violence is always wrong eh. Walang dahilan eh para gumamit ng dahas eh. The only way talaga is kung self-defense talaga eh. No. Yung nung nakita ko yan kasi outright talaga sa tingin ko kagad mali kagad eh. Hindi dapat nangyari yun. Ganun. So yun ang stand ko basically. No.
From what you saw?
From what I saw, violence is no matter what sabihin mo, hindi nirespeto yung ano niya, hindi yung ganito. Walang baril yung dalawa eh. Yung matandang babae saka yung bata, they huddled together. Wala eh, siyang may baril eh. Walang, hindi ko ma-imagine eh, na some way papasok yung the justification of using yung force na gano'n, lethal force. Hindi. And for me, violence is always wrong.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Benny. Attorney Ramil, from a lawyer's point of view.
Camelo, walang justification doon, walang excuses doon sa ginawa ng pulis. Karumal-dumal talaga yung ginawa niya. No amount of yung ginawa niya. Sa ilalim man ng batas, no, or sa procedural aspect man ng PNP operation or approaches sa mga ganyang sitwasyon, walang justification doon, Camelo. Pero ito, let me just parang ipaliwanag. There is this, meron kaming pag-aaral sa criminology na ang tawag namin ay victimology, no? Wherein ang konsepto nitong victimology is hindi para alisin ang kasalanan ng kriminal. Kung may pagkakasala ang kriminal, talagang dapat i-condemn, let justice be served. But victimology focuses on the factors or maybe the role of the victim kung bakit nangyari yung insidente. So dapat ito ay pinapaliwanag nila. Maaring may factor, maaring may role sa situation, sa environment, personal doon sa victim, direct or indirect, na maaring nag-contribute doon sa pangyayari. Pero hindi maging dahilan dapat yun para alisin ang sisi at kasalanan ng kriminal. Criminal is a criminal. Pero ang sinasabi sa victimology is that at some point, no, sa proseso sa pagbuo ng isang krimen, sa pangyayari ng isang krimen, somehow titingnan natin. Probably may factor or may condition or may role na naging papel yung biktima. That's the study of criminology. Pero at this point in time, na i-highlight mo yung victimology vis-a-vis doon sa nakita ng lahat sa social media, I think ako, personal na pananaw ko, parang hindi ko pwedeng bigyan ng highlight yung role ng biktima kung ikukumpara mo naman sa karumal-dumal na ginawa ng kriminal. I guess that's just my opinion there.
Okay. Thank you very much, Attorney. Professor Eta.
Well, from the perspective, of course, of human rights kasi, even the definition of the rule of law, halimbawa, they are trained to learn about the law, to understand the law, and to be the law enforcer. But from the international sense, the UN, in other words, United Nations definition, we speak of the rule of law, it must be, number one, publicly promulgated. So there's got to be transparency. Number two, equally enforced. Yun ang hindi nangyayari sa atin. Tapos number three, independently adjudicated. So dapat sana si judiciary independiente. Pero alam na nga natin na hindi nangyayari yan dahil iba nga yung patakaran at pagkahabol. And then number four, and must be consistent with international norms and standards, human rights norms and standards. At yun ang pinaghuhugutan mo ng gabay para sa, when you look at a law, you will always look at the substantive aspect of the law and the procedural aspect of the law, di ba? And in both cases, kahit sa procedure at procedure lamang, there is the human rights dimension of procedure and there is the yung procedure that is irregular. Kaya dapat titingnan mo lagi doon. And then pag pumasok ka doon sa substantive, ganun din ang pagtingin doon.
Okay.
And I don't know that napapalalim yung pagtuturo ng ganito sa kanila. Dahil ang perspective naman ng police, limited na limited lamang sila doon sa ano yung lumalabas? Substance doon sa batas.
Okay. Maganda po yung paliwanag na yun. Dr. Benny, bago ko balikan si Atty. Ramil, yung reaction ng anak, ng minor de edad, ng anak ng pulis, parang very unusual. Yung kanyang reaction, parang wala lang reaction. Parang everything is just okay. How would you attribute that?
Well, meron kasi yung event na yon for anybody, no, for that matter, hindi lang bata, no, anybody who's in that case, no, nakakita ka right very in front of you na pinatay, no, definitely you will have a reaction. And the reaction ng tao will vary from one person to another person. No, so you can have a numbing effect, no, para hindi ka ma-overwhelm. So parang na-deadma ka. Or you can be in shock or in disbelief, no? Magtulala ka. Pwede mag-freeze eh. O pwede mag-freeze eh. Hysterical to begin with, no, hindi pa on that situation, pwede magsisigaw. Along tahimik, no? Kasi yung sitwasyon talagang ang tawag dun traumatic talaga eh, lalo dun sa bata. That is a very traumatic event. And more so dun sa mga family members now, very traumatic yan. Now, so yun din ng isang naging concern natin issue. Paano matutugunan yung trauma na yan at matitreat sila dun sa lugar niyan, Tarlac. Mabibilang natin sa daliri na naman natin ng ilang psychiatrists, no? Mga pinakamalapit na center sa kanila sa Baguio, no? And sa Cabanatuan, ang lalayo, no? Isang problema pa, no?
Okay. Okay. Yes, attorney.
Yes, Camilo, thank you. Iano ko lang, kaya nga kami sa criminology ngayon, no, with our new professional regulatory law, hindi kasi namin kinukonsider ang pagpupulis as a profession. It is just a practice of our criminology profession. Isa lang ang pagpupulis dyan. No? So, dito sa bagong batas namin na inaprubahan naman noong 2018, ay binibigyan namin ng emphasis ngayon yung human rights. As a matter of fact, sa bagong Program Standards and Guidelines o CMO na in-issue ng CHED, na isa din ako doon sa mga nag-craft, ay nagbigay na kami ng separate subjects on human rights and international humanitarian law for that purpose. Additionally, we also provided 2 courses or subjects, about 6 units, on character formation para dun sa mga criminologists namin. At hiningi nga namin sa PNP kasi tama yung sinasabi ni Ma'am Eta eh. Human rights violation really can be a result of ignorance of the law. Kasi kung hindi mo alam yung batas na i-enforce mo, well, obviously, no, whether you like it or not, natural law or, human law, ay merong aspeto ng human rights. Hindi pwedeng mawawala yung human rights doon sa ganung aspeto. Ang problema nga namin dito, dapat i-identify ng PNP na turuan mo ng 6 months ng halo-halo. You cannot absorb the concept of human rights in 6 months. na ilang oras mo lang ituturo, pagkatapos hayaan mo na siyang mag-patrol diyan, mag-engage sa mamamayan.
Okay.
Pagkatapos isang beses mo lang siya tuturuan during the training lang, hindi pa pwede 'yon. Dapat merong consistent, constant training or education about human rights. Kasi sa social contract concept ng ating community, no, ang limit ng exercise ng government power ng enforcement is basically, precisely, human rights. Pag hinayaan na natin yung enforcement ng laws natin without taking into consideration the limiting power of human rights, ay magkakagulo nga tayo dyan. So ang tanong, ito, nagtanggap ka ng mga kung anong baccalaureate degree lang, tinuruan mo ng what? 8 hours of human rights in a 6-month period of schooling, ng training? Matalang sabi namin, while in criminology, you have 1 semester of human rights, you have about 12 units of human rights and character formation and patriotism.
Okay.
Bakit hindi niya binibigyan diin yan? Isa yun sa mga minumove namin ngayon. And identify kung alin talaga yung units, kumbaga, i-compartmentalize mo i-harmonize mo yung tinuturo mo doon sa trabaho ng pulis kasi hindi pare-parehas yung trabaho ng pulis eh.
Okay. Attorney Gabao, kayo ba meron kayong research studies doon sa mga criminology graduates of their experience in getting into the service? Because I've heard of anecdotal accounts na there is also graft and corrupt practices bago papasok ang pulis sa serbisyo. Kahit bumbero sa Bureau of Fire Protection at doon sa BJMP, meron din graft and notes eh. Have you checked on your graduates how they are doing?
Yes, Camelo, no. Hindi naman pwedeng hindi naman pwedeng i-deny ito ano. Pagdating sa Technical Committee on Criminology and of course sa PRC, I'm also the chairperson. Lahat yan dumadating sa akin no, na merong corruption, merong discrimination, merong under the table, lahat na halos, no, para lang hindi makapasok or makapasok ka sa loob ng PNP. Hopefully the PNP naman, in fairness to them naman, dahil paulit-ulit itong reklamo na ito, itong pinag-usapan natin, umabot na rin ito sa Senado, sa investigation. Nag-create ang PNP ng isang unit, no, specific for the purpose of recruitment and selection. Na ngayon nga ay nakipag-ugnayan naman sila sa mga deans ng criminology schools and administrators of HEIs, no? Hindi lamang para sa mga criminology graduates, sa lahat naman. Nag-devote sila ng special office for the purpose of recruitment and selection. Okay. Pero hindi kasi natatapos doon, Camelo katulad nung lumabas din sa investigation sa Senate. Supposedly kasama dyan yung background investigation. Dapat i-background check mo talaga yung applicant mo. Hindi ka dapat nagre-rely doon sa mga certifications na ini-issue ng PNP, ng NBI, ng courts, ng prosecutor's office. There has to be a devoted unit also that will conduct background investigations of all applicants.
Okay. I just want a short reaction from you, attorney. I talked to a retired police general. Ang sabi niya, isa pa sa nakakagulo yung Napolcom. Sabi ko, bakit? May pinadismiss na akong police dahil nag-abroad. Dismiss na ng PNP. Pag-appeal sa Napolcom, nakabalik. Namayad pa yung PNP. Sabi ko, ano nangyayari? Ang anecdotal account, may sinuhulan sa Napolcom.
Transactional nga
Okay.
Camelo, ganito no. Ito ay pinag-aralan ko na rin. Ang dami ko na rin namang pag-aaral na ginawa dito. Alam mo sa ibang bansa, London for example, sa pagdating sa security sector kasi, dapat yung oversight mo at disciplinary authority mo should not be coming from within the security sector, especially sa police. Dapat ang oversight and disciplinary mo is coming from other agencies or combinations thereof, civilian sector. So
Okay.
ako, ang proposal ko dyan, dapat ganun ang gawin natin. Especially so, no? Bubuksan ko na rin ito. Especially so sa PNP. Mabuti sa Armed Forces of the Philippines, pag pinopromote ka from the rank of colonel to the chief of the EFP, dadaan ka sa Commission on Appointments. So that lahat ng mga kalukuhan mo mula nung ikaw ay naging tenyente all the way to colonel, mahalo ka yon. Pero sa PNP kasi, hindi sila dumadaan sa Commission on Appointments so that kahit na anong katarantaduhang ginawa mo before, kung kadikit mo si politicians and minions of politicians close to the kitchen of Malacanang, I'm telling you, lahat yon mawawala yon and so you will be promoted. Kaya
Okay.
napakahirap ng promotion sa PNP compared sa military. Napakadali sa military ngayon kasi iniingatan nila career nila yan
Okay.
Mm.
Member of the House of Representatives. Or katatapos ko lang yata, kwan na. Basta I remember, dun sa Commission on Appointments, siyempre meron din yung House doon at alam naman nila.
May house contingent.
Mm.
So, kinuha nila ako to witness yung promotion ng mga colonels to generals, no? Nandun si Palparan. Di wala nang nangyari, no? Dahil pinag-aralan ko yung record. Kinuha ko lahat yung record ng CHR. Wala pa ako sa CHR, no? Pinag-aralan ko lahat yung record ni Palparan and everything else. So, nilabas ko ito. So, hindi nila, sabi nila ganun, well, this is the commission, this is the House Committee on Human Rights that is talking. Ako nga yung chair ng House Committee. So, we have to abide by the committee's position o sabi ng House. So, hindi nga napasa si Palparan. So, naiwan siya doon. Natapos na ako sa member of the House of Representatives. Then, napasa si Palparan shortly after.
Makalusot.
So, yun na, nakakasuya talaga Tapos, ang sabi sa akin nung H. Rao, general, ito si, I remember him si Chuck Ginto. He was the head of the
Human Rights Affairs Office.
Human Rights Affairs Office. Sabi niya, walang mangyayari kung lecture ka lang ng lecture diyan sa mga pulis. Ang dapat natin ginagawa, kasi alam niya siyempre, no? Tapos pinakikitahan niya ako ng mga ginagawa nila at kung ano pa yung kulang. Kunwari, sasabihin nila, gagawin na nila ito, pero yung pala, pupunta sila sa hotel, aayusin na nila. So he would show me the shenanigans. Talagang makikita ko, ay ganun ba yun? Sabi, kaya ang gagawin natin, kailangan application ng practical cases. Case. So, maganda rin pagka seryoso yung general who's the head of the Human Rights Affairs Office, maganda ang mangyayari.
of homicide, no? And all other administrative misconduct. Hindi ba dapat red flag na ito? So ibig sabihin, ang nakalagay kasi doon, was acquitted because for lack of substantial evidence, no? So more or less sa mga lawyers, ang ibig lamang sabihin noon, walang ebidensya or maaaring hindi tinuloy ang pag-prosecute ng kaso. Pero hindi ba dapat red flag na ito on the part of the PNP na yung mga ganitong tao, eh kung ayaw mong tanggalin, dapat pilitin mo na siyang isubmit yan sa psychiatric intervention or psychological intervention, no? Kung ayaw mong tanggalin, na hindi mo na kuniniwala, hindi dapat. Pero kung dalawang beses ka nang may kasong homicide, that should have been talagang hindi lang red, napaka-red na flag na yan na hindi mo pinapalampas na dapat yan. Kung gusto mong tulungan yung tauhan mo, dapat pinasubject mo na siya sa psychiatric or psychological intervention or at least tinanggal mo na siya sa serbisyo. Hindi po kaya dapat ganun, Doc Benny, ang ginawa ng PNP? Or sa lahat ng ganung kaso?
Tama ka, neon lights na yun eh.
Neon lights.
Nakikita mo, neon lights na, hindi lang red flag eh. No, it's like, I'm reminded sa workplace, no, yung drug-free workplace. Actually, mga malilit na signs pa lang eh. Sa personnel pa lang, nakikita mo madalas ang absenteeism. Ang absenteeism niya madalas sa natatapat sa long weekends, no? So Monday hindi nakakapasok, yung mga ganung tipo, pirming late, no? Sa opisina, pirming nawawala, madalas ang punta niya sa bathroom, yung mga ganun type. Meron ka nang napipick up noon eh. What more kung ang napipick up mo na meron ng mga kaso, meron na ano. That's not more a red flag na neon lights na nga sa akin para ka nang pinapakitaan ng senyales. Teka muna, may problema to, tingnan mo na. No, so it should have been addressed, no. So NP screening could have been done also. Pwedeng pagawa kung meron talagang nakikita na talaga sila, no. Short of investigation, wag nang mag-rely lang dun sa investigation, no. So I think I think meron din siyang issue ata ng refusal to take a drug testing.
Yeah.
Yung kagad isang red flag na kagad yun eh.
Yeah. Pero sasapat ba yung sinasabi na may topak yan? Pag sinabi bang may topak, ano ba yun? Generic term ba yun? O ano ba yun? Medical term ba yun? Doc Benny, bago tayo magtungo kay Professor.
No, it has many meaning. May topak in the sense na gago or tarantado or what yung tawag natin. May topak in the sense din na may mental disorder. No?
Pero it's easy to say, pero kung wala ka namang medical records to prove na may topak, baliwala yung ganung statements.
Yes, usually kung halimbawa nag-apply siya, ginawa niyang defense, insanity defense, no? Ang isang tinitingnan diyan would be i-determine kung meron siyang before, no, during, and then after ng event, yung crime itself, merong record merong signs and symptom na nasisiraan siya ng bait o hindi niya ma-discern yung what is right and wrong, no. Yan. Okay. So hahanap ka diyan ng history before, no. Meron na bang dati, no, na nakita na ba siya dati, nag-treatment na siya. Tapos yung after, no, i-observe din yan after, meron bang mga symptoms. Tapos in particular, magfo-focus yung mag-evaluate diyan, no, yung at the time na kinumit yung crime, no, merong bang mental disorder or merong usually psychosis psychosis at the time na kinumit yung crime, o talagang hindi niya ma-discern yung what is right and what is wrong at that point in time.
Doc, pwede ba yung temporary insanity?
Hindi usually nag-hold in court yun eh. No? So
Hindi
Ah.
ganun kadali yun, ha?
Ang mas mag-hold in court is if you're able to prove talagang even before meron na eh. Tapos nun, at the time na na-commit yung crime, it was a product of an insane mind. And then, after the commission of the crime, mapapakita mo pa na meron pang sakit, no? Yan ang mas magandang, mas malaking evidence na na sabihin mo it was meron talagang insanity.
Okay.
No?
Dahil kung merong insanity yun, abay, wala nagot yung nagsagawa ng neuropsychiatric exam. Dahil hindi niya nakita yun. Di po ba?
Oh, that will be hindi naman not really kasi hindi naman be all lang ano eh.
Sabagay.
LP screening eh.
Yeah, okay. All right. Professor Eta, your thoughts please. How can we move forward with all this?
You know, natatawa na lang ako eh. Kasi talagang blatant ito and we are so angry. For so long. How many, what happens? Sino ba yung napatay si Espinosa sa Visayas?
So,
Tapos, pumatay sa kanya, na-promote pa. And you know, and it is known. It is known. Ang daming cases na ganyan. And then, you know, the cases, yung mga spot reports, at saka yung mga profile cases ng mga PNP na hinihingi ng Senado, hiningi ng
CHR,
hindi binigay. Una, hiningi ng CHR, tapos sabi ng Senado, ibigay yan. O, sige, okay. That was the time of Bato. Hindi pa rin binigay. So finally, yung sa Senado, binigay, Pagkatapos nun, binawi kaagad. Bakit nyo binabawi? Kasi the President wants to read first. And then, pag nabasa na niya, saka na ibibigay. Isang katerba yun eh. That involves thousands. Paano ba namang ibibigay? So, I mean, you know, the entire governance question is what has been happening.
okay.
So, and then one more point, no? The little girl, my heart goes out to the daughter, because the daughter came close and she said, "Don't you know that my father is a policeman? And I don't care," sabi nung those were the provoking things eh. So, napikon siguro itong si Nuesca. Doon sa sinabi ni Sonia na, "I don't care if your father said." But you see, and the child just watched hanggang the whole incident took place. And then the father, Nuesca, took the child and naglakad siya. So what is in the mind of the child? And you know that the sabi nila, the whole that when they started to cry, mga bata, mga minors yan eh. Mga minors lahat. So when you speak of, you know, that what should be done, and then the education and so on and so forth, the entire climate of impunity has been encouraged precisely by the policies of power.
Okay.
And you know, just to make it, we are in a democratic country, yung three branches,
Equal branches of
powers, and so on and so forth. But obviously, when you silence two branches so that you can monopolize your power and it becomes very autocratic, that is what's happening to us.
Yeah. By the way, for the information of our audience, we also invited the Police Brigadier General Ilbrandi the spokesman of the Philippine National Police, no?
Randy Ana.
Oo, si General, yung bagong spokesman. Kaya lang, meron siyang biyahe sa probinsya for his Christmas break. But he's willing to be interviewed one of these days. No? Sige, ano pong mensahe ninyo with all this crisis, with all the negative events? Dr. Benny, how do we keep our senses together? Paano tayo mananatiling matino? Anong gagawin natin?
Well, itong with this event, no, yung as I was saying, violence is always wrong. And maraming violence and nakikita, especially sa mga bata nakikita. Kasi the family is the factory of almost everything eh. So yung mga bata, no, especially na they will be exposed to media, merong violence diyan. It can affect them later on. So ang message ko is ang first line na defense ng mga bata, no, is really the parents, no. So yung mga parents, you should know kung ano yung pinapanood. Meron kayong capacity na i-cut off kung violent ito, you think it is not appropriate from them, no, for them, no. So very important yung role ng parents, no, because they are the first line of defense ng mga anak natin eh. And they are the future eh. Ang mga batang to, they will be the future. No? So, very important. No? So, yun lang. I hope natanggalin nila sa YouTube yung mga footages na yun. No?
Uh-huh. Okay. Yes. Thank you, Dr. Benny. Attorney Ramil, your thoughts, please. How do we get out of this?
Number one, while sabi nila they are trying their best to recruit the best people, no, para sa organization. Pero katulad ng mga napag-usapan na natin kanina, hindi ho robot yung mga tauhan ninyo, mga tao din yan, may pangangailangan yan. And considering the environment, yung working environment nila, dapat pag may nakakita ng mga red flag, no, exert effort na tugunan din yung pangangailangan ng individual na pulis na yun, katulad ng mga psychiatric or psychological intervention na tulad ng ganyan, no? Kasi nakikita ko dun sa ginawa ng pulis na yun, talagang that should have been prevented in the first place kung yung neon sign na sinasabi ni Dr. Benny ay inattenda na kaagad ng PNP. And hopefully, dapat ang PNP should come up with that program already, no? Hindi lang puro disiplina, kahit tatapon mo lang sa Mindanao, pagdating sa Mindanao, maghahanap na ng padrino, lipat lang sa ibang lugar, hindi na po-promote pa. Yung mga tipong ganun, hindi nakakatulong yun sa organisasyon, hindi nakakatulong yun sa individual na police. At lastly, sa mga nasasakupan ko naman sa mga criminologists na nasa law enforcement, specifically sa PNP, and ito, I would like to reconcile, no, kung kaya ko reconcile yung sinasabi ni Ma'am Eta kanina na, human rights violation is basically caused by lack of understanding of what the law is. Pero pinapakinggan ko rin sinasabi naman ng Presidente, sabi naman niya, you do your job as police officers within the bound of the law. Kung kailangan patayin mo, patayin mo. So the burden is really in knowing what the law is. Kaya para sa mga criminologists, no, na nasa PNP at sa mga pulis na rin, wag kayong gagawa na kung alam yung labag sa batas. Because there's really a human rights violation emanating from violation of what the law is. Hopefully, patuloy kayong mag-aaral ng batas patungkol sa mga trabaho ninyo. At yung mga bagong batas natin ngayon, ang daming mga human rights law ngayon na lumalabas, no?
Thoughts?
Briefly lang, kasi I've said too much already. I think that, when we talk of violence, the worst kind of violence that has taken place has been global, and that was First World War, Second World War. No? Then the rest have been ethnic warfare. But what's sa global warfare na yun, napakahalaga yung sinabi ni Eleanor Roosevelt, It was a long time ago. But that was the start of the Declaration of Human Rights, Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Tatlong bagay lang. Ang ingay-ingay namang marami, but sabi niya, let me reduce it into 3 things. Kanya. Yung Universal Declaration of Human Rights, plus the international human rights laws that emanated from this as a foundation. Sabi niya, unang-una, it is the recognition of the dignity and the right to human rights of, and that includes the right to life. No? So, henceforth, hindi na commodity ang tao. Human rights ang tao, meron siyang dignidad, may karapatang pagtao. Pangalawa, when there are disputes, we settle disputes even among states peaceably. We don't go into wars, we don't go into conflict, but peaceably, diplomatically, and we make sure that we are able to resolve things with the use of the law. And then number 3, as the United Nations, all of us together, our strategic goal is to develop global peace, because it is only through global peace that we are able to develop as a nation, sustainably as a nation. Ang Pilipinas naman is not the worst state. Maraming more violent than we are. But I think that if this is used as a perspective, since we have 8 of 9 international human rights principles, core human rights instruments, the head, Mr. General Sinas, maybe he should study this and try to find out how this can be applied. Batas to, how this can be applied sa Philippine National Police. There's hope pag ginawa niya yan. Pero seryoso, maybe the next time I make a statement, sabihin ko kay General Sinas, why don't you try that? So yun lang.
Okay, let me end our discussions today with a simple quote from Einstein. Okay. Sabi niya, against conscience, even if the state demands it. So thank you very much, Professor Eta, for your time. Attorney Ramil Gabao, Dr. Benny Vicente. At sa lahat po ng nanood, it's a wonderful discussion talking about violence and crimes a couple of days before Christmas. It's never too late to learn about the value of life. One life lost is one too many. Thank you very much. God bless us all. Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Salamat.
Ito ang Oragon Internet Television. Maaasahan sa balanced news in public affairs, education, music and information gamit ang mga bagong teknolohiya sa pamamahayag. Maaasahan sa katotohanan, kaagapay ng mamamayan sa pagkikipag-ugnayan sa pamahalaan. Oragon Internet Television Broadcasting.
Ladies and gentlemen, we now conclude another day of broadcasting activities. You have been watching to this virtual broadcast station, Oragon Internet Television Broadcasting, a commercial non-stop virtual broadcast station through Facebook and YouTube. Registered with business name number 1909782 by the Department of Trade and Industry, and authorizing to operate until July 2, 2025. Oragon Internet Television Broadcasting is now signing off.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas. Kayang magiliw, pero sa silang